Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to meet with you guys. It's been a while since we had a chance to get together, so this is good. We're out the gate. Our guys, in my opinion, have given excellent effort through these first 7 games. Their focus on preparation, execution, doing the little things the right way have directly reflected in our overall success on the field. Now, in the area of strength and conditioning, our emphasis is on being the strongest, most well-conditioned team through these last 5 games to finish out the season. Because it doesn't really matter how strong you are in September and October if you can't carry that into November. Now, there's a cumulative effect to everything that we do as a program, whether it's in the complex or away from it. Showing up on time, doing all the little things, like I said, the right way, being detail-oriented, having a positive team-first attitude, the way we eat, the way we sleep, the way we recover. These are crucial keys that are going to lead to our success down the road. Now, a year ago, our first game wasn't until October 24th, so we're entering some uncharted territory when it comes to our younger, more inexperienced players. And focusing on our keys and understanding those keys are going to lead to our success long term. Now, this week, our focus is on resting up, and moving forward, our focus is going to be on Wisconsin. And with that, I will open up to any questions.
How different is your job in season as opposed to out of season?
It's very similar. The volume in the weight room obviously is much lower than it is in the out of season. The focus in season is playing the sport of football. The team's broken up into 2 different groups. You have the guys that are travel squad, the guys that are in the 2-deep roster, that their workload and their volume in the weight room is much more reduced relative to the out-of-season portion. And then we have a group of younger guys that aren't playing as much, where we try to take advantage of the in-season, and we see it as a mini off-season, so their intensity and their volume is a little bit higher because they don't have to be recovered to play on a Saturday. So that's where the difference is in the way we do things.
Is that like for the true freshmen who are on the scout team that are developmental prospect types?
Correct. That's exactly it. All those true freshmen, the scout team guys would fall into that group of guys that are more intense in the weight room.
What's your role and the role of strength and conditioning in a week like this where you don't have a game on Saturday?
So our emphasis when it comes to just, again, breaking the team up into groups, like the guys that are playing a ton, we're focusing on getting them recovered enough to play the next game. We have to take advantage of this window of time and not really push it in the weight room. The younger guys, they're still pushing forward. In terms of practice, and their volume in practice is increasing because, again, we're taking advantage of the bye week. But things don't really change a ton with our older, more experienced guys. If anything, we try to back off a little bit with them so that they are fully recovered going into next week.
How do you handle a guy like Logan Jones, who's coming back from an injury in season? What is that process like for someone like him?
So coming off that injury, we treated the first part of the in-season as a mini off-season to regain and recapture his strength. Once he was fully rehabilitated, we had to, we couldn't just throw him back out in the practice field and expect him to stay healthy. So we had to kind of go back to square one and basically treat it as a mini winter phase so he's fully developed, fully strong enough to handle the rigors of full-time practice.
How do you handle somebody like Connor Colby, a true freshman who's trying to catch up with some defensive linemen who've had 3-4 years of Big Ten strength and conditioning?
So one thing that helped Colby was being a mid-year startup guy. So we started in January, so it's not like he's just showing up in June and doesn't. So he had a full winter phase of training to really capture some strength out of him, and so we didn't have to really put on the training wheels when it comes to summer conditioning and summer workouts. He was able to kind of be more fully integrated, and I think that prepared him for what he's doing right now. He'd be harder pressed, and he'd have to be a special athlete to be able to just jump right in from June, just right off the bus and be able to be plugged in. And he's also wired a certain way. He's very intense, and he's pretty squared away, very mature young man. So that's why he's able to handle what we've thrown at him.
I'm assuming that helps with Keegan and Arlen, too.
They're in the same boat, both mid-year guys, and they got that winter phase into them. Having spring ball also is huge for all three of those guys. So it's definitely, you can see it on the field. They're able to help us earlier.
What are some of the steps for Riley Moss to come back now that he's been out? What does he have to do with you guys? Do you guys have some specific drills for him, or what do you do?
Nothing. I can't go into the specifics, but more the person and the group of people that are leading that charge are our sports medicine staff, and I take the cues off of them, and we communicate back and forth as to how we're going to reintegrate Riley.
How important is your job specifically in the recruiting process?
How important?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's any more important than anybody else's. I mean, it's crucial that, kids coming into our program get to know me and get to know our strength conditioning staff, because we're going to spend more time with them than anybody else on campus. So that is a crucial point, but that's not the end-all be-all. It's kind of an all-encompassing. They have to get a good feel for the entire program in order to feel comfortable with what.
Do you think players coming in, do they realize how much time they're going to spend with you and your staff?
I think they do, because that's communicated on the front end. And that's one of the things I communicate, especially with this incoming group of freshmen. They understand, sitting down with them on an individual basis from day one, their first week on campus, they get a feel of, okay, this is what's going to entail. And when you get into Iowa football, you understand that you're going to be training more than you're going to be playing the sport of football. I mean, we train for eight months for 4 months of games. So
you mentioned that part of your job is making sure that you're the strongest team, the most conditioned team. How do you assess week by week how the team holds up in the fourth quarter conditioning wise, and how does that affect what you do with them week by week?
So there's nothing that you can do in season if you haven't done the homework in the out of season that's going to really increase your strength levels or improve your conditioning levels. Outside of recovering the right way, I think that's the most crucial thing, is being, taking more off the plate than putting on in season. But if you haven't done the work out of season, it's like you're behind the 8 ball. So I think our performances and the stuff that we've done positively is a direct reflection of what our kids have done and the investment they've put in out of season. But when you get in season as a strength conditioning coach, you really have to handle the stresses that aren't there in the out of season. Like when out of season, you're not practicing, you're not having a ton of meeting time. They still are student athletes, so you have to, they still have to be able to balance classwork. But the focus and intensity in season is much higher than the out of season. So we have to prep them for those rigors, before they actually get to them.
Following up on that, obviously the Penn State game put a lot of wear and tear on their bodies, physically, emotionally, mentally, then going to Purdue. Coming into the body, what have you seen from the team in terms of how they're recovering and kind of where they are in all aspects during the bye week?
One thing about our team that I really appreciate and respect is consistency. These guys are extremely even. Never try to get too high, never get too low, and I think that's a reflection of our leadership. And they understand that one game does not make a season, and there's 5 more games to go, and it can go a bunch of different directions. We're in complete control of that, about in terms of how we prepare, and that's what the focus is on. It's on the next game. So our guys are moving forward, and the tone and tenor has been extremely consistent. They're positive. They're ready to go, and they're focused on Wisconsin.
You talked about, like last year, you were just now starting the season. Now you're back into a normal season, normal schedule. Is that, how different is this? Does it just feel more normal now, or do you think back to last year and how you kind of had to cram everything together?
It absolutely feels more normal, no question about that. And going back to my comment about the younger guys, so we have a group of second-year guys who last year was their first year. So now they get to this point, and they, a year ago we were just starting our first game, but now they have 7 games on top of their back that they didn't have last year. So they don't have really that experience to fall back on of a full season. And then you fast forward to these first-year guys that this is their first year of college football. So like when you get into early November, typically the high school seasons are coming to a close, and you still have another month of football that they have to attend to. So those are 2 things you really have to consider and really coach them up on how to handle those things.
How in tune are you to mental health issues for them? Because football's an emotional game. There are highs and lows, whether it's coming off a high like Penn State or a low like what happened the other day. And does that shape in any way what you do or expect from them on a day-by-day or even week-by-week basis?
The biggest thing with that is awareness. Like, the body can't differentiate stress, whether it's emotional, mental, physical. And sometimes people just focus, well, he hasn't done a whole lot of work, he should be fine. Well, this guy has a whole other world. Like, they spend 2 hours with us, and they have a whole other 22 hours of the day that they have to tend to. So I'm keenly aware in terms of, like, this is not the only boat that they're sailing, so to speak. So just being aware that these guys are going through more than just football is crucial. So you have to key in, like, read body language, see how demeanors change from day to day. And those are the things you have to key in on and focus on and pay attention to. If there's a change there, then, hey, is this something we have to talk about? You want to talk about? How's class doing? How's your family doing? And that, it just opens up the door to conversation.
How often do you have conversations like that, or have you over the last year or so?
Well, you have to check in with your guys daily.
Okay.
Like, that has to be a daily thing. Like, you try to communicate as much as you can with the guys, especially if there's guys that you know may be having issues. It should be a daily thing. It shouldn't just be a one-off and just wait until something happens. You should be checking in with your guys every day.
You get a lot of data off of different things. I think that's maybe one of the biggest things that's changed maybe in the last decade or so for you guys, that you get so much data. What's maybe the latest thing that you've gotten that you're like, wow, this is really interesting. It's kind of maybe changing how you do things.
Ooh, good question. Still, you got to focus on the simple things. I think that, and I've mentioned this before, but sleep. There's nothing that supersedes, like, sleep. If you're sleeping well, you're able to handle stress better, you're able to recover better, handle school better. That's the biggest thing. And we still look at that with a portion of our team, our younger guys, because the transition from high school to college and not knowing how to manage your time and sleep well is crucial. And those are the guys we focus on and try to counsel in terms of sleep and that metric.
What are the sleep monitors now? I mean, who wears them, and is it more voluntary based, or is it the younger players who are wearing them for the first year or whatever?
It's just the younger players first year. Everyone else, now there's older guys that volunteer here. I'd like to stay on it, but we don't require it, because once they've established themselves and have a routine, they're squared away. It's more the younger guys that are still trying to figure everything out, that it helps us, counsel them. And to your point, it's a point of data in addition to several other things that we're looking at, body weight, all these other things that we're looking at, the way they train. Are they making their weights in the weight room? So it gives us a more all-encompassing picture of how they're doing on a lot of different levels.
How specific does that data get? Is it just hours of sleep, or can you see like how deep the sleep is?
You can't really tell how deep, like, truly the sleep is. We can tell, like, quantity, and that's the biggest thing. Onset and quantity of the sleep is the biggest thing.
Is there a specific number that you want them to target?
Our gold standard is 8 hours.
And then when you have these shorter weeks that we've had with these Friday games, how does that change from a recovery standpoint?
Well, we definitely have to change the way we practice, obviously, but to address that. And then, it's just a matter of counseling the guys on the importance. Okay, you have one less day to prep and to physically recover. Take advantage earlier in the week so that we're physically ready to go by the time the game gets there.
All right. Thanks, Ray.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Do you prefer to go by R-A-Y or R-I-I?
RAI.
R-A-I.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it's good to see you guys, and excited to be here with you today. I'm glad that as I caught the end of Ray's, so I'm glad he didn't have a sleep monitor on me in the third quarter of the game Saturday, because it might have told the story. I might have been asleep for most of that thing. So obviously glad that he didn't monitor me there. But halfway through the season, and I think start with the most recent game. Very disappointing loss. Very disappointing performance, really, in all facets for us offensively. But going back to the beginning of the year, starting with the Indiana game right on through, knew we were going to face a lot of challenges right out of the gate, both with our own unit and then with some of the teams we were facing, right? So very pleased to be sitting here at this point with 6 wins. Certainly would prefer to have 7. But feel like we've made a lot of growth, made a lot of strides in some areas, and then there's other areas and there's other places that I think we still need to continue to grow. And quite frankly, we're still looking for some answers. So the good news is we've got a nice little pause here to reset. Work on some of the things that we think are going to be important moving into the second phase here of the year, the next 5 games, and get those dialed in. And then really looking forward to the challenge that's going to be presented, starting with going up to Camp Randall. But really, if you look at the whole 5 games as a block, working through the Big Ten West, the goal is always to play relevant football in November. And right now, that's all in front of us, and it's up to us.
What challenge does it pose when you're trying to implement your offense and you have maybe a younger offensive line than you're used to?
Look, there's challenges every year, and there's challenges every week, right? And certainly you have to be aware of what your hot spots are as a team or as a unit. And we've worked some guys through that lineup. And I have to tell you, quite frankly, I'm very pleased with what some of the young guys have done and some of the growth that I've seen. You can start at the tackle position with both Nick and Mason. Thought they've done a really nice job. They've seen some pretty good players. They've gotten an education from time to time, and there's no education like experience and baptism by fire. So I think that's been positive. For a guy like Connor Colby to step in, and I know Kennedy. I told both he and Max the other day. I think all they had to do was get rid of those guys because I believe they're undefeated going into this weekend. So they're a lot better off without the guy starting at right guard for us. So maybe we want to check him out this weekend. But a guy like that a year ago, right? He's in high school playing high school football. And, now he's playing in Big Ten football games on a pretty national stage. Been really impressed with the growth, and then he's had to battle through some injuries as well. So, and then on top of it, getting Shooter back into the rotation, getting him back healthy, I think has been a real positive. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a guy like Justin Britt or Cody Ince and Jack Plum, who've seen plenty of duty for us and done a nice job. And then you have Linderbaum kind of as the steadying influence throughout the whole group. And, to answer your question, what challenges does it present? Well, I think the challenges would be a lot more without a guy like Tyler Linderbaum in the middle kind of steadying the ship.
Brian, you said you look back and you were is there any one thing that disappointed you the most after you kind of look back at the Purdue game?
From Saturday?
Yeah, from Saturday.
Absolutely. I thought our third quarter, that's why I made my poor attempt at humor. I've been around Ken too much. I didn't used to make dad jokes, and then you get a bunch of kids and shoot. I thought our third quarter was really disappointing, right? And I know the players feel the same way. You look at our football team and how we need to play and the way we're going to win football games. I'd rewind that. Let's go back to the Maryland game, for example, just sticking with the most recent stuff. There's a situation there in the second quarter, early in the second quarter, right? We kick a field goal early, they go down, they score, they make it 7-3. We get the ball back, and we didn't have a lot of answers. They had a pretty good drive they put together, right? They kind of went right down the field pretty methodically. We get the ball back, and we put together a nice long scoring drive, possess the football, we advance it, and then we punch it in and we score. And that makes it 10-7 at that point. Special teams comes up with a huge play, huge turnover. 2 plays later, it's 17-7. And then I think the very next play offensively was the Kerner interception, fumble, and then Dane pulling that thing out of the pile somehow. So if we're going to have a good football team, if we're going to win football games the way we're built, we need to play off of each other, right? And I thought at that moment, the defense maybe was bleeding a little bit. We were able to right the ship, steady it, go down, score, and then one thing leads to another. You look at the Penn State game, I don't think this exists in boxing anymore, but if the standing 8 count existed in football, we would have been taking one in the second quarter of that Penn State game. They go down, they kick that field goal to make it 17-3, and it doesn't look good. And we're able to put together a nice long drive, right, convert a 4th and 2 down at the end. Charlie does a nice job scoring, and it's 17-10, it's a ball game again. And if you're going to play good football teams and you're going to win those games, those are drives you have to put together. I thought we were looking at the same moment in the third quarter, frankly, right? So we score, I think it's 7-7. They go down. They score a touchdown, make it 14-7. Then they kick a field goal, right, to open the half. It's 17-7. It's a ball game. It's no problem. We hit Laporta for like 12 or 13, and then 3 plays later we're punting. And so that's 4 plays. and we don't have anything to show for it, then the defense comes up with another turnover, right? It's still 17-7, and we go 3 and out. And then the next time, the game's a little bit different at that point. So to me, that's the part I look at. And I just think it ties back to who we're going to be as a team or as a unit. Those are the situations where we need to come up with something, and we didn't, which is disappointing, and it hurts, and it stinks, and you invest a lot in it. But the reality is, unfortunately, you go out and you compete long enough, right? Some of those standing 8 counts turn into 10 counts. Unfortunately, right? You prefer when it's not a standing 8. I think I'd rather just get put on the canvas with one shot. I'd prefer that. But, hey, you compete long enough, you're going to take a couple of those on the chin. The key is, what do? Are you going to learn from it? Are you going to grow? And I think that's what we need to do as a football team right now.
How big was the 3 and out after the Sheffield touchdown was overruled?
I think that's pretty obvious, right? I mean, it's everything I just said. What we needed to do was go down and get a score. And we didn't do that. And so, whether you go 3 and out or you run 5 plays, the reality is points at that point in the football game are of critical importance. And we didn't come up with any. So 3 plays, 6 plays, 10 plays, to come up empty-handed, it's not good.
I would say based on statistical measures, your evaluations are different than a lot of other teams because you play complementary football, not necessarily try to get as many plays and don't care what the defense does for you. But you've kind of hit an optimum of around 4.5 is what you're shooting for in the running game. It's 3.1 right now. Seems to be either A, numbers against you in certain situations, or B, one guy's missing a block and kind of tumbles from there. How do you judge it, and how do you get better without really putting too much pressure on yourself and for the players?
Try to put plenty of pressure on us, ourselves and the players, right? The goal is to execute. So you bring up an interesting point, right? I'm not much of a golfer, right? So I think I've mentioned that here before, but I've gotten advice before, right? Don't squeeze the club, let the club do the work, and that's probably why I'm not a very good golfer. You know what I mean? Like, I just get a bigger club, squeeze it as hard as I can, swing it as hard as I can, and wonder why it's not working. Certainly we can't do that. That's why I bring it up. So the way you phrase the question, I have to agree with you. You don't want to put too much emphasis on it. But, hey, look, the reality is if we're going to play winning football, if we're going to play that complementary football, we need to be running the ball extremely effectively because it takes the pressure off of everything else. And that's not just offensively. That's team-wide. And you bring up another good point, right? What is it? Is it numbers? Is it one guy here? Is it one guy there? Yeah, certainly you could point to all that at some point, but that's just the reality of football, right? It's an execution-based game. Offense is an interesting proposition because it takes all 11, more or less, right? We could try to get some guys away from the formation and run the ball, but ultimately, too, what they do on the backside of that thing is going to matter a whole lot. So I think the only thing I know, the only answer I know, I learned this a long time ago, is when things are not going the way you'd like them to go, when things are not going quite as well as you want them to go, you have to fall back on fundamentals, and you just have to get back to the basics, right? So what we've tried to do is figure out what we can do well. We don't want to put too much pressure on guys that haven't played a whole lot, right? And try to keep the pictures consistent for them. Try to keep those viewing windows smaller. Because as you get older, you can handle a lot more. And there's a lot more uncertainty that gets cleaned up by an experienced player. So I think that comes back and it falls on the coaches. It falls on me as the coordinator to make sure we're showing those guys consistent pictures, trying to put them in positions where they have a chance to be successful, where they have a chance to excel, because we have some really good players up front. And we need to help them develop and help them grow. And that's our job as coaches. And I know it doesn't always seem that way. We look miserable from time to time, but it's the fun part. It really is. The reason you get into this business, it's funny, the bye week, you get real philosophical, I'm sure. When you get your ass kicked, you get real philosophical, too. I've noticed that. I don't have as many deep thoughts after a win. But, you sit there and you think, like somebody was talking about, you get into coaching to help players and to be around young people. And when I was 23, I don't know if that was my goal. Do you know what I mean? I don't know that I was thinking that far ahead. I wanted to be around the game. I love coaching football. I love playing football. I love being around football. I couldn't imagine my life doing anything else. But I think I'd be lying to you guys if I said I had this altruistic motivation to just change lives. And then when I was 23, that was my life's work. Like, I was going to go do that. But the longer you're in it, and certainly the more you're around young people, the more you find yourself getting excited about that, right? And the football is great. The winning is great. That's the goal. We're trying to win. But to me, it ultimately becomes a byproduct of developing those guys. And there's no greater joy than seeing them have some success and accomplish something. And I think that's where we're getting with our line. The reason I bring it up is this is the fun part of coaching, right? Is when we have some young guys, and we're going to get to that point where they're accomplishing things that maybe when we set this thing out in September, they weren't thinking about. I'm talking about specific players, right? You got guys that probably were wondering, like, where the heck, well, that's not true because Colby was here in the spring, so, like, he knows where the dorms are and stuff, but probably wasn't thinking about being a starting right guard in the Big Ten. And then hopefully, we got 5 more weeks to get him to where I think he can go. And that's the fun. That's the joy in this thing. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen without some setbacks and some bumps along the way. Notice that, too. I didn't understand that when I was 23 quite either, but I'm learning.
Brian, it's kind of a twofold question. Tyrone Tracy's only got 83 yards receiving. Yep. That's kind of surprising. Is there something that you guys have to do offensively to get him more involved? And also the development of Keegan and Arlen, and you have to get them more involved?
No, it's all related, right? But I think certainly if you look at the targets and you look at where we've tried to direct the football, we've tried to give Tyrone opportunities, and certainly we've handed him the football. We found other creative ways of trying to get him involved, and we're going to continue to do that. He's a good football player, and I think some of the best things he does are with the ball in his hands, right? So can you get him in space? Can you get him in a place where he could create some plays? And we're going to continue to try to do that. Because I think he's a valuable part of the team, and I think he's a valuable part of the offense. And frankly, I think it all ties together, right, to your question about running the football. All these things tie together, right? Are we distributing the ball enough? Is it going to the right places? Are we stretching the field? Are we making people defend the entire field? So we need to continue to do that with Tyrone. But then, you'd have to be blind not to notice the development of some other guys too. And I've been really pleased with what Keegan has done. And it goes back again to the question about the offensive line. You're looking at it in the spring and you're excited, but you also know, boy, that's a big role, and can we get a guy ready to do that in a short amount of time? Because it's not just all physical and it's not just all football, and then you start adding the layers of becoming a college student and the social aspect of just being young, and then the pressures of being young too and not having that experience. So for him to get to where he got, and it was great to see him. He didn't have a catch till the Colorado State game, and I can't say I remember the last guy that his first touch in college football was a 54-yard touchdown. That was good, and I think he's averaging, it's pretty impressive, his numbers right now per catch. So we need to get him more involved. We need to find ways to get him the football more because he is a guy that when we think about that X position, we want a guy that can win in single coverage situations. And the game's simple, right? We put a guy here, and then we put everybody else over here, and then you got to decide what you want to do. And if you're going to put everybody else over here and you're going to play with one guy over there, we have to be able to make you pay for that. And I think that Keegan is becoming that guy. I don't want to put the cart in front of the horse, but we certainly need to find him more opportunities to be involved. And then Arlen is another guy that's come along in a much kind of different role, but still been extremely productive, right? And, some of the things that he has a knack for in the screen game, just traffic type running, I'm hopeful we don't have to see him return a punt this year. I think we got that covered, I hope. I like the guy that does it. But, some of that skill set of traffic, body awareness, things that you really can't put a watch on or a measurable on. Arlen has some of that. And the thing those two guys have impressed me with are the fact that, look, they're football players. They just kind of show up and play football, and they don't get too overwhelmed by anything. and they look like they belong. They act like they belong, but I'll tie it back to the beginning of your question too. That stuff doesn't happen by accident, and I think you have to give a lot of credit to guys like Tyrone or Nico or Charlie, older guys in that room, that you can go two ways, right? You can say, well, they're getting some of my touches, or they're getting some of the balls that I wish I got. Or you can say, shoot, these guys can help the football team. How do we help them come along? How do we help them learn the ins and outs of what's going on and what major college football is about? And the leadership that we've gotten out of Tyrone, Nico, and Charlie in that room, I'm pretty pleased with that. And I think that's a big part of the story of those guys' development as well. You look at, Nico, I saw his answer. I don't know who asked the question. I don't know what exactly the question was after the Penn State game, but to walk them through the last play, right, the last touchdown play, because we managed to rack up a bunch of plays after that. But the touchdown play, right, what happened? And he went through and he just basically name-dropped every single person on the field that wasn't him. And then I think he finished with something that, like, I was the guy that, was the feature of that play, got to score, got the ball. But the collective mindset in that room, I can't say enough about that, because that makes a big difference, when you're trying to play a team sport.
How would you evaluate what Spencer's done in the first 7 weeks, and what adjustments, if any, are you making?
Sure.
In the past week?
Well, he's won 6 games and he's lost 1. And I try to remind him of that, right? Because I think he's a perfectionist. And I referenced it when Pat asked the question earlier. It was Pat's question, not Scott's. But, you do this long enough, you're going to take a couple on the chin, right? And I've been around a lot of football. I've been around a lot of competition in my life. And I've been around a few quarterbacks, and I've been around a few good ones. And look, you feel after the game, right? Of course, we're all disappointed. We didn't win the football game. That's the goal. But you hurt more for the players, because you know what they put into this, and they're the ones on the field competing. And so to see them in the locker room, and to see the hurt, and to see the disappointment, it's tough, right? And obviously Spencer was feeling it, and I think I might have seen him right before he came in and saw you guys. And I remember having a moment just thinking to myself, like, hey, they pay me money to do this job. The availability is set up the way it is. I've learned too. I actually like talking to you guys. I don't know if I'd love talking to you after Saturday. You might not love talking to me either. I get a little moody. But here's a 21-year-old guy that's got to walk in there and face the hard questions about what just happened in the game. And he was the one out there laying it on the line, right? And here I am going in to take a shower and put my stuff on and go home. And so I just told him. I grabbed him, I gave him a hug, and I just told him it's going to be, number one, it's going to be all right. Okay? I've done this a long time. And number two, you better get used to this, because the position you play and what you do, and you're going to be on good football teams, you're going to have another one of these at some point, right? Where it doesn't go the way you want it to go. And you need to learn, and not that he doesn't know, right? But you need to learn how to deal with these things. And I think he has done that fine. So the adjustments, I think we got to protect him better. I think we got to get more open for him. I think we got to do some of those things. And here's the reality. When there's makeable throws and we don't make them, that is his responsibility. So we need to fix that part of it. And we had one of those early in the game the other day. But where I'd evaluate him after 7 games, we've won 6 of them. He's a big part of the reason we have. And when you're the quarterback, if you lose one, you're going to be a big part of the reason too, right? Just like I am.
Off of what you just said, coming into the bye week, what are your goals? Looking at the entire offense, or what are you hoping to accomplish, with the extra time that you have?
Just in this week?
Yeah.
I think first and foremost, right, any bye week, when you get to the bye week, the first thing you need to do is evaluate and then take a good, hard look at yourself, reflect, right? Evaluate, reflect. Number one, are we hitting the goals, the metrics, the things that we deem to be important? Some yes, some no, okay? Why yes? That's always important. Like, okay, third down, we're not quite to where we want to be, but we've had a lot more success this year than we had last year. Why is that happening? All right, so you go through the tape, You're looking at everything from personnel to the play call to who we're playing against to whatever it is. And then you look at other things, hey, here's the one, first down. We are not nearly as efficient on first down as we were a year ago, or as where we need to be. Why is that happening? All right, and the hardest part as a play caller is the first place you need to look is in the mirror. And as a human being, that's the last place you ever want to look, right? Like, it's a lot easier to just start pointing fingers at everybody else and say, shoot, everybody needs to do their job a lot better. I'm pretty good at mine. But it's another thing I've learned over time. I'm not, okay? I need to make sure that I'm looking at what I'm doing all the time and seeing if it can be better. So that's the first thing you need to do. And then you need to act on that information, right? So you develop that information, okay? Spend, the first day, 2 days doing that, taking a look at those things. And then once you take a look at it, okay, are there actionable steps that we can take to try to improve some of these things? We practiced this morning, we'll practice again Friday. And that's where you start maybe trying to introduce, and you're not making wholesale changes, right? You're not reinventing the wheel. You're just tweaking some things here or thinking about moving some people or whatever it is. You take a look at that in practice. And then you try to move forward. The other part that I do think is well, let me give you the other two parts, in my opinion, of bye week that are critical for players, coaches, anybody. You got to come up for air, right? Like you have to take a breath. What we do is demanding, it's difficult, and it's a lot of fun, right? But that's a 7-week stretch of games, plus training camp, plus, right? Where you're just going as hard as you can. And trying to get to the next one and trying to perform and practice as well as you can every day. It takes a tremendous amount of focus. You need to relax. You need to just step away a little bit. And I learned that during my time in the NFL. The bye week is about just taking a step back sometimes, because you'd be amazed what kind of new perspective sometimes you bring to some problems that need solving when you can clear your head a little bit and just clear your mind. You try to do that on a small scale during the season in the week. You try to do it on a bigger scale in the bye week. So unfortunately, I have not, scheduled any great vacations or anything like that. But and then the last thing I think is really important in the bye week, right? So you've got that come up for air, okay? You're tweaking and you're reevaluating, but you also need to take a look forward, right? You need to take a look forward and see what, in this case, the next 5 weeks look like. And what is our plan for the next 5 weeks? You don't know what every game is going to look like, right? Because things change every week. But you're trying to get a bigger picture, global understanding. You go into the season. We didn't know. We felt like we knew Indiana to some extent, but they had a new coordinator, and the game played out that way, right? Like, saw a lot of things that we anticipated seeing, and saw some new wrinkles and some new things that they were doing. Iowa State, we knew extremely well, a lot of history, and then, so on and so on. Colorado State, we had 4 games on that staff in the offseason, so it's not like you can have a great study. Kent State, same thing, not a ton of games on them because of the shortened year last year. And then you get in the Big Ten schedule. Maryland had a new coordinator, so it wasn't like we had done a lot of off-season game planning for them. And then, Penn State, we know extremely well. They know us extremely well. So we did some off-season stuff on them. And then you get to Purdue where, same head coach, new defensive staff. So we hadn't done any off-season work on them. I bring all that up because, hey, we get to the bye week now, and coming up out of the gate, we have Wisconsin, who we have history with and we know pretty well. Shoot, Jim's been there as long as I've been here. And then now we move forward through Northwestern, new coordinator, and definitely just watching TV, some differences from maybe what they were doing in the past. Illinois, brand new. And the only familiarity we have with their scheme is getting ready for Missouri last year before that game was canceled. So you try to take some time in the bye week to take a look at those opponents in the advance and do a smaller version of what you would do in the offseason, so that when you come in on a Sunday before one of those games, you're not starting from scratch, right? Because one of the things in preparation, very difficult to walk in on a Sunday and get rolling on a week when you don't know anything about the team you're playing, because you got to get caught up and you got to learn and you got to start realizing this is their structure, this is how they align, these are the positions the guys play. All coordinators have a personality, right? When you've played somebody for 5 years, It's like a divisional game. You know going in on Sunday, you turn the tape on. I've been watching plenty of Wisconsin. We were out on the field today. The head coach asked me, he said, what does Wisconsin look like? I said, they look like Wisconsin, right? And I mean that as the highest compliment, because when you play someone like that, or Penn State, you turn on the tape, you expect to see what you expect to see. And if you don't, then it's like, oh man, what the hell's going on, right? Then you got to start all over. But so that's the other part of the bye week that is really important, and just trying to make efficient use of your time in that regard.
Along those lines, the measurements kind of vary from game to game. You look at what you would expect against one opponent, but then next week, the mettle of your foe, exactly what they do defensively, which is better than just about everybody else in the country. Do you grade yourself differently depending on the opponent based on, if you get 50 points, I'll be the most shocked person in this room.
Against Wisconsin?
Yeah. And you're probably...
Didn't Notre Dame almost do it?
Well, yeah, but it was on their offense. Well, wasn't on their defense.
Laughing, yeah.
But,
That's not how they play. If there's 50 points scored in the game, you might win some money.
Over under?
Yeah, it's just, it's a stylistic thing.
Right.
And yeah, absolutely. Well, I think to answer your question, if this does answer it, I go even a little bit bigger picture. Every football game is its own puzzle, its own set of challenges, its own. You create a script, and that's probably not the right word. There's like a roadmap to win each game, right? As a team, because that's who we are. We know we're going to have to go win as a team. And let's look at two different games, right? The Maryland one goes about as close to that roadmap as it can. And then even a little bit better, right? Like some things happen that maybe we didn't think needed to happen, but boy, they sure made life easier, And for them, they're looking at like, this absolutely could not happen, right? So you have a game like that. You have a game like Penn State, which doesn't really go to script early, but we settle in. We're able to stay in the game, and then we're able to play the kind of game we want to play then. And then you look at a game like last week, right? Which unfortunately, that's not going to script. And then when we do, like we talked about in the third quarter, have those opportunities to get back on track, to get things going back the way we need them to go as a football team, we're not taking advantage of those opportunities. And next week's going to be a whole different challenge. Start with the fact that we're going up there. Right? We haven't won up there since 2015. I remember it distinctly, and I remember what kind of game it was. It was not a shootout, if I recall correctly. I do recall correctly. And, we had to come up with a stop on the goal line. That ultimately is what won that football game in 2015. So, I would just anticipate a similar game. And if it doesn't go that way, great. As long as it's going the way we didn't think it was going to go for us. But look, they're a good football team. I don't really worry about records, okay? And we're at the point now, these are all divisional games, and they're a little different, in my opinion. And I know we live in a world, I come out here, we get these 3 TVs back, I come out here to eat every lunch, and there's an ESPN, Big Ten Network, right? And I'm still yet to see a show that actually shows the highlights. It's just usually 2 people yelling at each other about some hot take. That's the world we live in. I get it. So we like to compare records. I'm at flag football last night, and, the Packers beat the Jaguars by 3 touchdowns. So they're playing the Bears, and the Bears couldn't beat the and all I know is there's a bunch of 8-year-olds running around out there that didn't care about that. And I think the Packers lost to the Bears or whoever, right? So who cares? My point is, we know these teams know us. These are going to be certain kind of games, and it's going to come down to who makes the least amount of mistakes and who plays the hardest for the longest. And that's when it's fun, right? This is fun. This is fun football time. But each game is going to be a little bit different. Each game is going to be a little bit different, and I don't know that I've studied it quite well enough to know what the whole thing needs to look like, but I can tell you this from experience. I would recommend that we don't turn the ball over against Wisconsin because this is not a game where you want to give up possessions. That's one thing I've learned the hard way in previous years. You do not want to give up possessions against these guys because I've turned on more Wisconsin tapes and been 6 plays into the tape. The offense has run 6 plays, and there's 7 minutes left in the second quarter, and they're down 14-0. I've seen a lot of those tapes, like a lot of them. That's not how you want to play these guys at all. Steve's trying to save me. I'm happy to keep going now.
What have you seen from Potterbaum so far this year at fullback?
I mean, he's fun to watch, isn't he? He likes collisions. He likes breaking equipment. I don't know if Greg Morris likes him as much as I do. I mean, you talk about a guy who, to me, if we're going to be a good offense, if we're going to be a good football team, we need guys like Monty Potterbaum, guys that do all the dirty work. He's gotten a little bit of the glory, and I've had to work on him a little bit because he's starting to feel himself a little bit. So we've had to really humble him after the touchdown. But I'm obviously kidding. He doesn't say anything. But he gives you some elements, and we haven't always been able to do as much of it maybe as we'd like to do. But even in the Maryland game, right? So when we put Goodson out there and we threw him a double cut up in the high red area early in the game. Might have been on the first field goal drive, actually. Potterbaum was the lone back, and just like we had handed him the ball a little bit in some of the other games from those sets, if we didn't get the coverage we liked, he would have been running an outside zone play. He's just a little bit more dynamic than maybe your typical fullback as a runner, which allows you to do a little bit more offensively, and then on top of it, he's excellent in protection. And he understands the protections the same way any back in our offense would understand the protection. So you don't lose a lot with him out there as a single back. Certainly he's not as dynamic as our backs in some of the stuff, right? I don't think we're going to throw him any free release option routes. But he does open things up a little bit for you and provides a little bit of depth. And then, whether you're talking about him or a center, the guy's a tempo setter, right? Like when you're going to go up in there and you're going to pour it up in there and lower your shoulder and hit people, you help set the tempo. Now if we could just get him to step out of a tackle or two on some of these dives, we'd be real good then. He should have probably scored against Penn State, but he's got a bad coach.
Brian, I've got the benefit of hindsight here when I ask you this. The back-to-back quarterback sneaks. Do you wish you could have that back, and can you explain your thinking?
Sure, yeah. I wish I could have him back? Yes. Do you want to go through the litany of calls that I've made in my career that I wish I had back? I don't know if we have enough time. My thinking was really simple. On the first down, or in the first one, right, I knew we had 2 downs to make about 2 yards. And based on recent history, I felt pretty good that we would get it on 2 sneaks. Watching the tape, sitting there on the sideline watching us not get it, yeah, absolutely. Wish I would have called probably a different play on 3rd down. I don't know what I would have done on 4th down, but I would have probably thrown the ball on 3rd down, retrospect. But, we could go back through about every game, and, some of them aren't as obvious as that, right? Like a lot of times, it's the hardest part, is like we were talking about earlier, right? The hardest part of what I do from time to time that I've learned is sometimes the calls that you absolutely wish you had back, you guys probably didn't even notice. Because sometimes they're just some of the biggest ones in the game, and they go unseen to some extent, right? There's a lot. Any call that didn't work, I'd take back. It's not like when I was a kid though, and I was playing like Tecmo Bowl, and I'd get pissed and I'd just hit reset. I was looking for the reset button the other day, and I couldn't find one. So here we are.
Brian, is the Wildcat still in the mix?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times that's a matter too of making sure if you're going to play like that. Right, if you're going to play without a quarterback, are you gaining an advantage? That's the only question you need to answer. And it's like anything else, right? A lot of times defenses, like I thought Iowa State had a great plan, okay? Iowa State, we line up 3rd, 4th play of the game, whatever it was, we show them a backfield set, let Petrus get out of there, and we're trying to clean up a picture. And Iowa State dared us to throw it to somebody. Okay, they left a guy in there. They didn't account for everybody completely. They kind of half did, half didn't. Clouded the picture up. I mean, shoot, we didn't have a throw out of that, right? So that's good defense. Some other defenses aren't always going to adjust that way. So what you want to do is you want to make sure we get an advantage when we do this. Because if we're just making it easier for the defense, then it's really not worth doing. And then the next step is, can you throw the ball? Can you do some other things out of those sets if people are going to overplay them? So, we've been working hard at some of those things, but the reality is you just, every time you do anything offensively, you got to ask yourself, is this worth it? Are we getting what we want out of it? And so if the answer is yes, yeah, sure, absolutely. You'll see it plenty. We like it a lot.
You've obviously seen a lot of great centers, but what makes Tyler special?
That's a question that I get every week from a production crew, and I'll give you the same answer I give them, though. It's not physical. It's not physical. He has the same traits that any great lineman or really great player that I've been fortunate to be around in my life have. He wants to be great. Like, he wants to be a special player, and not because he thinks he just wants to be as good as he can be, and he maximizes what he has every day in everything that he does. And he happens to have some really great skill set, right? So it gets amplified. But all the physical stuff, I think that's for anybody to see. Who he is as a person, the way he shows up every day, regardless, and goes to work and does his absolute best to be his best, that's what makes him special.
You spoke to some actionable things that you can take into the bye week based on some of your reflection. What are some of those things that you've been able to pinpoint that you think you can implement in the bye week that'll pay dividends in the last 5 games?
Yeah, well, I don't want to be coy, right? But there's some things that I just think will be better left unsaid. I'm only teasing you. I don't want to give you too much. But look, I think there's better ways, always better ways. If you look at things, if you study things, and if you learn from things, can you use your personnel better, right? Can you put people in better situations? Can you affect the defense in a different way? Can you show them a different picture? Just simple stuff like sleight of hand, right? You feel like Michael Scott doing his magic tricks, but sometimes, right, some sleight of hand stuff can help. And so you're looking at all those things, and you're just trying to figure out, can we do what we do the absolute best in a better way, or can we make it look a little bit different so we can keep doing it without them knowing what we're doing? If that makes sense. I know that's very broad, but that's what you're trying to look at, if that makes sense. It could be a shift, it could be a motion, it could be a personnel group, a formation. It could be a person doing something that, somebody else has done, you know what I mean? But having them do it instead, because maybe they can do it a little bit better.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Brian.
John's had enough. God, we're already almost an hour into this. I'm gonna get a freaking parking.
Put enough time.
I'm gonna get a parking ticket over this thing. A $16 parking ticket. It was Tiger Hawk. It's still taking video forever.
It's so spread out.
How you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Doing great. Seriously, it's been a long time since we've been in this building or this room for a press conference. I feel like last time was Media Day, right? Media Day?
Yeah, that was outside.
That was outside, yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys being here. There's a lot of stuff you could be doing, a lot of people you could be listening to, but I appreciate you guys being here. The weather is still beautiful, okay, still beautiful, even going back all the way back to Media Day. But appreciate you being here. A little bit kind of about special teams and kind of where we're at. I'm happy with where we're at as far as how our special teams been playing, how we've been helping contribute to wins. Definitely not satisfied. There's a lot more out there for our football team and for our special teams to help us win football games. And right off the bat, I really love this team. Okay, love the guys that are on this football team. Not only the special teams, but this football team is a really good football team. The men in the locker room are really, really good men, and I think some of that may get overlooked a little bit. But I really feel strongly about this team and how they've come together. They're a very resilient group. Talking about special teams and the football team, a very resilient group. Have been through kind of ups and downs since over the last 12 to 18 months, and they've handled everything very, very well. Handled adversity, and so look forward to working with these guys moving forward. A little bit kind of about the special teams, right? So happy with how our punter's been punting the ball, how he's been able to help flip the field, help control field position. Also happy with the way our field goal kickers been scoring points and helping our team out, kicking off well as well. I know there's a couple kicks he'd like to have back. Same thing with the punter, a couple punts he'd like to have back. But you don't get those opportunities back. And I think our return game, happy with the way our returner's been returning the ball. I think there's some others out there, if we're really being truthful and we're really looking and watching hard, there's some opportunities out there that maybe we could have scored or could have helped our football team even more. And so that's what this week is about, like finding out what are the little things that we can do better, how can we improve, how can we make this team, this special teams unit even better. One, be closer as a team, and then two, how can we help finish some of these plays to help our football team. But like I said, happy with where we're at, definitely not satisfied, and I know the guys aren't either. So that's what we're doing here this week, just trying to improve, looking at scheme, looking at personnel, a couple things that can we tweak here, tweak there. Do we have the right personnel matchups? Is there someone that could match up with this guy better? However you want to look at that. And so that's what we're doing. And the thing I think that's beautiful about this football team and about our special teams units in general, I think that we play team football, right? Team football. So like I'll talk about Torrey. He's punting the ball well. Okay, he's not doing that without a good snap, right, from the snapper, a great coverage from the guys in coverage unit, the guys protecting him up front. I think he'll be the first to tell you. Same thing with Caleb. He's kicking the ball well, scoring points, putting the ball in the net. However, can't do that without a smooth operation, the snapper, the holder, and then the protection. I think same thing with Charlie. I think he'll tell you, he feels very comfortable when he gets to have the two corners out there helping us in the return game, in punt return, and helping get him started, right, and the rest of the guys working for him in punt return and also kick return. So then again, I think everyone understands the role. I think everyone buys into their role. I think everyone's working to try to be the best version of that role that they possibly can, and that's why this group is so fun to work with. And all that said, any questions you guys may have, happy to answer.
I wanted to ask about Torrey and just the ability to kick the ball and have it spin and die at the three or whatever, and then but also the gunners, Ivory Kelly Martin and Terry Roberts being able to do that. I mean, how much work do they do, and what kind of drills can you do to kind of make sure that, hey, somebody's knocking it back, and then the pride that they show that's kind of rare, it seems.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the word pride. I mean, both those two guys, like they take those positions very, very seriously, and they're not the only ones, but they're the two that have made probably the most plays of recently, and they love it and they live for it. Like even in the game when Terry went in to play on defense, he came to me and said, "Don't you dare take me off a punt team," right? So that speaks volumes about a guy, and that gives a coach confidence, and it gives the team confidence, right? That he wants to do it, and he's able to go out there and do it well. But I think as far as how much we work on it, it's definitely a point of emphasis. It's something we work on, and we try to drill on and not every day, but the days that we punt footballs and we pooch punt. So that gets worked on all the way from spring football into the fall camp and into the season. And I think also and Torrey will be the first to tell you that he loves having those guys out there. First off, Ivory and Torrey live together, so they're roommates. Charlie lives with them. Henry Marquez lives with them. So and Max Cooper, all those guys, they're all really, really close as friends and people. I think that's the start of all of it, personally. And I think they really care about each other, and they really are trying to help each other out. All that being said, too, talk about team football and how this team is built, the people in this building, okay? I don't talk about other teams, but the team in this building, it doesn't work without, we've had great looks from the scout team too. Like, no one ever talks about it, no one ever thinks about it, but great looks from the scout team. Like, there are some really good young football players on this team that nobody's even heard of or even thought about being talked about. But they work those guys to death every day. And so I think that's where a lot of that comes from. And it's fun to see as a coach the things that you're trying to preach and things that, Coach Ferentz preaches about the program, about seeing these guys really take a step forward and really buy into what they're doing. I know that's a long-winded answer to the short question you asked, but
Have you seen the Punting is Winning shirts?
I have. I've found 2 of them in my house. They're not my size, though.
What do you think of it, and how much the fans seem to be embracing punting?
I think it's great from the standpoint of I know what Torrey's mission is with that shirt and trying to help these mothers and the charity that he's helping. He's unable to make money off his own name, image, and likeness as a foreigner, so he does it to help set up that fund. And I think it's very, very admirable, and I think it speaks volumes of who Torrey Taylor is as a person. I also think it helps when he's doing some of the things he's doing on the football field and how successful he's been. But it's definitely fun to watch, and it's very, very strange. You go in the game, and this last game we played, the first time the punt unit comes out, all of a sudden the fans start going crazy. Like, what the heck is going on? And my wife had to tell me after the game, like, you've never noticed that before? I was like, no, I've never noticed. And there's Australian flags in the crowd and that kind of stuff. So that's definitely cool. And I really, for Torrey and his family doesn't ever get to be here, right? They don't get to come here. They're still unable to travel to the United States as much as they want to. But I know that means a lot to them too. That their son is here and he's doing well and he's happy and people really care about him. So I think it's a pretty cool deal.
Do you think the fact that he's 24, does that help him with this whole transition?
Sure. I definitely think I know this. When I was 18 years old, there's not a chance. I could barely go from Alvord, Iowa to Iowa City, Iowa. I thought I was going to Manhattan coming from there. I can't imagine coming from Melbourne, Australia, across to the United States. So that part, the emotional maturity he has, definitely helps.
You had to make a change at long snapper. Can you kind of talk about that and talk about Luke and what you've seen from him?
Yeah, it's a crazy deal. And I think, Austin has handled it very, very well as he possibly could. He's been a pro about it. He's been a veteran about it. He's definitely helped the freshman, Luke, with that. And I think Luke has stepped in and done well. And, I think Austin definitely hasn't given up the job. He's definitely not trying to. And Liam Reardon is also, he's working incredibly hard as well, trying to earn that spot. And I think both those guys, again, the beautiful thing about our team and about our room and about the special teams in general is that we all are trying to help each other. And, again, someone has to be the lead person to go out there. Someone has to win the job. However, I think everyone works well together. You go to the Iowa State game. That was the first game Luke had played. You guys were at the game, most of you, I assume, but he didn't even have a nameplate on his jersey, right? So we had to make that change on the way over to Ames. And, he went in the game. He was about ready to take a warm-up snap on the tarp on the sideline. And then Austin, being the veteran he is and the kind of person he is, hey man, you need to go warm up on the grass. Snapping off the grass is different than snapping off the side tarp. So, like, to me, that's a huge deal. It doesn't seem like much, just a minute detail. It's a huge deal, right? The difference between snapping off the grass and snapping off the tarp. But I think that speaks volumes, like I said, about Austin, what kind of person he is, what kind of teammate he is.
For you in this Bible, you have an opportunity to step back and reflect. What do you think the most important thing is to implement to your unit this week, where you have extra time to maybe work on little things or prepare for what's to come next week?
You hit the nail on the head with little things. That's what we've been focused on. We worked exclusively on kickoff return today. Just trying to detail some things up. Felt like we missed a couple opportunities in the last game we played, but just cleaning up some details in that regard, and then maybe I kind of went in and reinstalled, just retaught some schemes, just so that we're all on the same page. Because you practice and you play and you prepare all this stuff, and then all of a sudden you get in the game, the looks aren't exactly what you expected them to do, or teams play you differently, if that makes any sense. So that's really been the focus this week, and that'll be the focus moving forward here tonight and then on Friday when we practice again. It's just trying to nail down some of those details. Again, some of them are schematic, some of them are technique-wise, and some of them are personnel-wise. Do we really have the right matchup for guys? So that's what we're working on.
You've had good success with veterans who maybe don't have offensive or defensive roles or established. I mean, Terry Roberts has kind of moved into that position, but guys in the past like Devontae Young last year, and then now you have like Henry Marquez, Dallas Craddoth. How well do they work, and how have you been able to kind of? Do you have to emphasize to them, hey, this is a great role, and then do they take it, or how does that kind of relationship work to make them enhance what they can do?
I think a lot of it starts in spring football, right? That's the focus for the whole football team, is we're trying to build the team, right? So back in spring football, we're trying to teach the incoming guys, the guys that haven't really been taught scheme yet, but then we really hammer the fundamentals, hammer the fundamentals over and over and over, and then it all gets brought down from Coach Ferentz. And how do you build the team? How do you make a football team? And that's what Coach preaches all the time about finding a role, right? And a couple of guys I'll cite, but finding a role and excelling at that role. Again, it may not be the role that you thought you were going to have coming here, that you were, that you really wanted to come here for, but right now, be the best you can be at the role you're in. And I think that's what our team is really good at right now. And I think we can still be better. There's still, a couple of guys I really wish would jump and grab at a role that I'm trying to give them, and trying to not give them, but they're trying to put them in. And then waiting for them to kind of grab hold and take that thing and run. And you talk about a guy like Devontae Young. I don't know if there's a better teammate that I've been around here at the University of Iowa than Devontae Young. A guy that was kind of offense, defense, no one really, was he up, is he down, where's he at? Becomes a special teams, and he just frickin' takes off. And I think you ask anybody that played with him what kind of guy he is, what kind of teammate he is, selfless, worked his butt off, was a huge contributor for us in football games. And guys like that to me are guys that really make this football team and really make this program. There's a couple guys right now that are doing that. I think Logan Klemp is a guy who's not playing defense, but he's done a very good job. Every week he's improved for us. Every week, the role we keep giving him each week, he's gotten better at. Guys like Turner Palisard, Monty Potterbaum, Marquez you've mentioned already. Kyler Fisher has done that, I think, as well. Really excelling at the roles that they're at, and so it's fun to watch.
Trying to get some freshmen out there. Carson Scherr is one of them.
Yeah.
What have you seen from him, and do you see any of the other true freshmen that could potentially play this year?
Yeah, I think Carson is a young guy that the world's kind of spinning for him a little bit, but it's been fun to watch him, and I think he's got a very bright future. And he's not the only one. I think I go back to talking about the scout team, right, which no one ever thinks about or talks about, but that young group of linebackers is going to be really good. You talk about Eli Miller, who walked on here, Kelby T-Lander, who walked on here, Jaden Harrell, Zach Tweed, Justice Sullivan. Those guys, they bring it every day on the scout team and special teams. I know they do for the scout D as well, but they bring it every day. They make it really hard on us in practice. So the games just seem a little bit easier, right? And you talk about Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean's going to be a really good football player. Right, he gives us a good look all the time, and I think that's another guy that could potentially find a role here on this last part of the season. Arlen we've talked about already. Arlen's kind of finding a role for him, and then Keegan Johnson as well. Talking about freshmen.
Not really a position that gets a ton of attention, but what have you seen from Ryan at the holder spot?
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up. Okay, I'm glad you brought this up, because the one thing that I feel like in our room, in specialist room, the one stabilizing force is Ryan. And, I'm very pleased with what he's done so far. Again, he doesn't get the recognition. I think if you ask any kicker, you ask Keith, you ask Caleb, guys that work with him every day, he's a really good holder. And it makes things very, you can correct a snap, a lace here or there that's not perfect. But I think that he's done a really good job. He also has a really good sense. As an older guy, a more mature guy, he helps Torrey out a lot, figuring out which ball should he hit, okay, with the wind and which way the pattern's going. But quietly, he's done a very, very good job with his role.
Thanks a lot.
All right, that's it. All right, thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Scott, I want to thank you for the picture that you took after the game. Yeah. That's going in a frame in my basement. So.
Oh, good.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very lifetime memory.
Yeah.
Mark, you okay after that fall?
I think I'll survive.
Just want to make sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sure his Twitter mentions something. I was hitting the mute button on 7. Deeds later.
Well, guys, thank you for coming out today. I appreciate that. You know, it's the 7th week, and, you know, this is a nice time to have a bye week, you know, to reevaluate and actually see how we've been doing up to this point. I think defensively, our guys have been practicing hard for, you know, the last 2, you know, as long as we've been out here since camp has started. I think our kids have really been working hard. Obviously, you know, last week was not exactly what we wanted. I thought Purdue played an excellent game. I think there's some opportunities in that game there that we could have helped ourselves with. We extended some third down, you know, series with them by getting some penalties. I think there were 2 critical third down penalties that we had, and then there was also 2 third downs that really came into, you know, is it an inch this way, inch that way of being a first down. So, you know, if we would have been a little bit more successful on that on third downs, you know, it went from 44% to probably almost 69% on third downs. But, you know, that's how close it is when these games are. There's a very good football team that we played. I think our kids played hard, but didn't execute and play with great detail on some of their technique at when they needed to, you know. But very pleased the way they came out to practice today. They're ready for a good challenge. Obviously, this bye week, we're resting a lot of our guys that have played a lot of snaps, and then we're finding out about some other kids that might have an opportunity to help us in the last 5 games here, whether it's going to be on special teams or whether it's going to be on defense. So we're excited about that, and I think the kids really were glad to get back on the field and get back to football and, you know, working on improving. And I think if we stay to that course of guys just trying to improve to be better than the last game that you played, you have a chance. And that's what I think they're looking forward to. I'll open up to some questions if you guys would like.
What's kind of your evaluation now of the defensive line? They seem to have a lot of disruption in a lot of games. The last game wasn't one of them. Where do things stand, and do you see any kind of either personnel movement to change positions, or meaning end to tackle, or do you think that right now status quo is about where you want to be with it?
Well, you know, the last week we were short really 2 guys, you know. Ethan's gone, and so was Craig. He was out. So we lost 2 guys, and I thought there were 2 guys that had a lot of energy and guys that can really move. So when you start taking 2 pieces of puzzle out over there with the front line, that guys, you can keep them fresh, it becomes a little bit difficult with the line of how many, you know, maybe we had 7 or 8 guys that are going instead of maybe 9 to 10 that could get out there and play. But very happy with it. The thing about playing that team last week was the ball comes out quick. You got to understand that, and it's hard to get to the quarterback like that. We understand that. We have to do better in the back end of matching up some things that could have helped us out a little bit. But I really confident that, you know, way we're going with our front is really come a long way. They're definitely farther ahead than I thought they would be at this point in time, and I'm really looking for, you know, some big jumps here in the next week or 2 to see how much we can get better as a defensive unit.
Phil, with what happened against Purdue, how much of that do you attribute just to David Bill being a great player?
I think obviously he's a good player. I think if you go back and look at it, there's some things that happened to extended some plays in there. You know, the one, there's a couple plays that he got. One is a deep middle post player. We had a post player who wasn't in the deep middle of the field, but we got out of that series, you know what I mean? And the big play that he had over there with the 60-yarder, there's 2 of them. One was 47 and one was 60. Now look at it. We still didn't give up any points on that play. You know what I mean? When we give up explosive, we gave up 3 explosive plays. and then we gave up probably 7 big plays, and that's between 15 and 20, and that's not who we are. And I think we could be better at it. I think that we usually sometimes you have more effect on the quarterback and his movement. They did a good job of protecting the quarterback and moving them and maybe switching a couple quarterbacks out, obviously at the beginning of it. They were rotating 3 guys, and they had different types of plays for each one of those guys. But he is definitely a good player, and I'm sure he's going to do well the rest of the way. But I think our guys have took the challenge on it. We got to be more exact at what we do. You know what I mean? Was it more us? There was nothing spectacular. You catch a 2-yard route, and not even a 2-yard route, maybe a 1-yard route, and then comes out and bends out around the thing, and then obviously a jump ball situation. So to me, I think our guys are really going to go back and focus and go back to fundamentals. Was it your technique? Is this something that maybe in the past that was out there that nobody had seen before in the first 6 games? There's probably some technique, being detailed in the first 6 games that maybe we got away with, and this happened to be, we got a situation, we get no turnovers, and it's very difficult if you don't get no turnovers to help your offense. And if you don't get off on 3rd downs, and I think there's a couple downs that we were 1st and 10, 2nd down, then we're 1st and 10, 2nd down, 1st and 10, 2nd down, and 3rd down. Okay, if you don't get the 3rd down, you don't have an opportunity to get off the field. So I think we need to make sure we work and do a little bit better job of that. And could we have helped them a little bit more as a coaching staff too?
Do you anticipate getting Riley back for the Wisconsin game?
I think he looks good. I mean, I think he's real positive out there today, walking around. And, I don't know where exactly that is and how long those things take. But knowing him, I wouldn't bet against him, because he's a competitor and he's a tough kid. And whenever the doctors release him, I think that would be that'd be great for us if he can. But he wasn't going to practice this week anyways. He was going to make sure that some of these guys get some rest, and there's a lot of wear and tear on those guys over a period of time, and I think it's well due, perfect time for a bye week anyways to get a nice rest.
A bit of a 2-part question. How much of the bye week is maybe reinstalling or re-emphasizing your core concepts with preparing for your next opponent, and then with that, how much of it is getting young guys reps where you might not get a rep during game week compared to keeping your veterans engaged in what's going on?
Very, very good questions on both of those. Obviously, you try to look farther down the road and say, what are we going to have to do with some of the teams that we're playing? It's a different type of, obviously Wisconsin's different than some of the teams that we played in the past, the first, 7 games. So, that's a challenge in itself. Obviously, we're going to be preparing for that, on Sunday, an extra day for that. That's going to help us out. But going back and saying, hey, do we need something else in the future to help us in the later games if we happen to run to another team? I could see maybe like a Nebraska, how are we going to try to defend them, just to make sure you have enough ammunition in your toolbox that you can have and operate and be able to come out of a game with a win.
What have you seen with Terry Roberts as he's stepping up in Riley's absence?
Yeah, I think, one thing is you're not going to phase him getting out there and playing. I mean, he's been on the special teams and creating a lot of big plays and on that, and he's a really good tackler and tough kid and energetic and stuff. But, he's got to understand when this goes in the first game, now you're the starter, you know what I mean? And when that happens, it comes a little bit of a little different way to look about things. The pressure might be a little bit tougher on you. But my thing is always about, guys, if you're a competitor and you prepare and do what you're supposed to do, then the games are easy. You know what I mean? The games should be easy. And the good thing about it is when we go through practice, everybody's taking the same amount of reps. I think I mentioned that before about how our first and second team guys get the same amount of reps. And the really good thing about it is our scout team is putting more pressure on us sometimes, I think, than the games on Saturday. And they have been. There's a couple times last week, if you were to sit there at practice and say, wow, that guy, the guys that we're playing against and what plays they made out there on the scout team was really intriguing to say, wow, well, that kid could help us. And can't wait. And it might be some guys that, we might have flipped around and said, hey, this guy, we can use this guy. Where can he fit in if you go 4 games, some young guys, freshmen, there might be some possibilities that guys can help us in special teams or in some sub packages on defense. So, and that's what developmental today, with some of these guys that get out there and actually see what they can do going against, our offense right now. And there's some good positive reinforcements of the things that we thought when we recruited some of these kids that's going to show up.
Well, you're owed a player, probably a player and a half for Linderbaum anyway. So is there any of the offensive players that you see right now? You said that they gave you a really good look. Is it the quarterback, number 5? Is it one of the wide receivers? I mean, is there
It could, this is one thing about practice. I know you guys don't come to practice all the time. Sometimes we use our defensive players to help us, run routes or something like that on the offensive scout team. So that there could be a guy from that stage over there that could help us. A young guy probably from Iowa or something like that. But I mean, Cooper DeJean is a pretty good athlete. Is a guy that I can see that, hey, maybe do we want to use him down the road or something like that in special teams. I think he's a great athlete, got a great skill set, can run, and where can he help? Where can he take a load off of maybe a Terry Roberts, instead of him being on the kickoff team or being on the punt team, or where can these guys help us that have these 4 games of eligibility left and still not use their year up and lose a year? So those are the type of guys we're looking for, And the good thing about it is we've been seeing them and we use them on our side, which is good because it's kind of nice because they know what routes we're running, and he sits in my meeting, so he's getting the coaching that he might need for if he is going to play on defense at some point.
What's the health status of Deontay Craig and Logan Jones on the defensive line?
Logan Jones, he played today, and Craig, I think he's going to be okay. I don't know exactly what the injury was, but they said he couldn't function, I guess. But I expect both of those guys, to be ready for Wisconsin week.
At the midpoint of the season here, are you concerned a little bit about the workload for Jack Campbell? Since I can't imagine he's a guy who likes to sub out much in practice.
No, it's hard. And he's got to understand that. I mean, this guy's, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know if it would matter if you take him out or leave him in. I mean, it doesn't matter to him. He probably gets a little bit offended if you want to take him out. But if you explain it to him and understand, there's a twofold. One, we don't want to wear his tires out, okay? And 2, some of the other guys need the work, and I think he understands that. And that's a good teammate to sit there and actually understand. Hey, let's make sure that what happens if he sprains an ankle, who's going to go in and take over, or you know what I mean? So these guys have to be ready. It doesn't matter who it is. One guy goes down, another guy has to come back in, and that's what we've been preaching since camp. The whole thing is to be able to go out there. The next guy has to go in and don't drop down the level of your expectations or your performances that we expect. Our standard is still a standard of what we want to do on defense. Obviously, it wasn't good enough on Saturday, but that's our striving point, is say, hey, this is where we got to be at, and we're not going to be happy about it until we start keeping. And you never do. You never win. You never win on defense. It doesn't matter how much you keep them down and score. It doesn't matter. You could win a game, and if you're giving up more, it doesn't matter. It's not good enough. You know what I mean? The whole object is don't let guys score. And obviously you want to win as a team, and that's what we want to do here. But for us to do that, we all need to be working at the same time and play at a high level, all 3 phases, and that's what we love to do. And we're always competing. And I think our guys compete like that.
When you look at Justin Jacobs, I know you've put him in, he's played some different roles. I think on your pass rush package, sometimes he slides inside to play weak side when you go kind of in there. And then, of course, he plays Leo. What do you see for his role going forward? Is he going to continue to play that way and switch off with Benson maybe in passing situations? Or do you think he can even evolve into more of an every down player?
Well, yeah, it's going to definitely, we sat there and talked about it. Do you play, more first and second down with him, whether that is, or do we have a sub package to go in there and actually have him be an extra guy somewhere in there to have 3 linebackers at the same time in passing situations. And to me, I think that's a thing that everybody wants to look at and always are looking at. And obviously we're looking ahead a little bit as this bye week goes on there and say, hey, what do we need and what will we need, and should we install some things and help us out this week, which we've been involved in doing that, and I think we've got a good start on that right now.
Brad talked a little bit about the bye week and the goals. Do you like wake up on Monday morning after a bye week thinking like, we won the bye week, even though you're not obviously playing a team? Is there any goals you wish to achieve?
Yeah, every day I wish I achieved to get up, make sure I get up. Okay, that's one. Okay, just kidding. No, every day you just want to come in and make sure you get a good work, and you want to make sure your kids grow and mature as a football player and understand the game, and it's so hard. It's so hard with the social media and everybody outside of this building here, that to be able to go out and walk in the street in downtown Iowa City or somewhere in the classroom, everybody kind of knows who you are as a player. And it's hard, and everybody knows what happened. Everybody's seen what happened over the weekend. How do you respond to that? And you got to be tough-minded to be able to handle situations like that and understand that, hey, you know what you did for the game in preparation is, and we got to continue to do that preparation if you want to be good. And what is good? Good is making sure that you're being at your best performance that you can be at that point in time. What can we do? And I think that's what our guys believe in. And our guys are really good. It was really intriguing the first day to get back on the football field today, and the energy that they had out there was really, intriguing after a game of, we haven't practiced since the game, right? And to see these guys move around, and then our older guys coaching our younger guys on the field, and really the expectations, what they think they need to do on the field, which is good.
Schematically, was there anything that you saw from the Purdue game that had kept you from having more turnovers?
No, I think he was very accurate. A very good quarterback. He was on target. They kind of kept things simple for him a little bit, and he was pretty exact on it. I mean, we didn't get there's a couple balls that were tipped up in there that we didn't get a chance to. I thought there was 2 critical things down there that, I thought we were playing really good defense, and it was just like a slant play that they called pass interference on Jack. It was like, it's kind of a freakish little thing. Was that really a pass interference or not? I really don't know. The other one was great coverage with Justin down the middle of the field, and that was a 3rd down, critical down. There was two critical downs there that were penalties that we usually haven't made, so that would have been at least a turnover in the ball, and they had to punt the ball. But those are the things that you kind of get frustrated at, and we just got to make sure that you have to be more exact. I mean, there's 2 incidents there that were like, how many times is that going to happen, But we were in good position, and it just happened to go the other way. You could have called it either way.
Were you surprised they used 3 quarterbacks?
No, we knew that they were really unsettled of what quarterback is. We kind of broke it up of, hey, when was 13 in there, when was 16 in there, and had a breakdown of actually what they were running in that case. And then obviously 12, we knew that when they put him in there, he was a running quarterback, and a lot of times it was on 3rd down and short and stuff. So, after a while, you kind of understood what it was, and it, kind of changes our calls a little bit and what to expect and how we approach the game.
How pleased have you been with being able to get these turnovers, throughout the first 7 games of the season?
It's been very good. We preach on it all the time, and it's been going on for a while of what we do and what we expect, and it takes some time, and I think our guys really buy in and of how you have to do it. I mean, when we go through that, and guys have to, you got to be in the right place, and if you're not finding, what I always say is, if you're in space over here and you're a defensive back, and there's nobody there, you better go find some work. There's no such thing as unemployment. You know what I mean? You got to go over there and try to get close. The closer you are to the guys that are attempting to throw the ball, the better chance you got to make an interception. And if you're not around the ball, it's hard to intercept the ball. And if you're not around the ball, it's hard to recover a ball, a fumble or whatever, a strip, whatever you want to call it. So to me, it's all about getting close to the ball and always looking for work. You know, there's no such thing as, you know, covering grass and it's not growing, you know.
When you look at next week's opponent, just, you know, usually you're in 4-3. I think a couple of years ago you were in 4-4 for a lot of that game.
Yeah.
How does a player like Kayvon Merriweather take that when maybe he's not going to be in the game, but for a dozen plays or so, versus the cash plays against like Maryland, you might be in there for 50 or 60 plays?
Well, it's going to be a very physical game, and that's a good thing of it. Good question. I mean, he's really been playing well, and I really like the way he's been tackling. And you know, sometimes when you rotate guys in there, you might have an opportunity to split those reps with Dane a little bit and take some pressure off of Dane as far as, you know, in there. So I think it's always evolving. There's always competition going in there, and I think he could be a guy that could be an impact player for a situation. You're talking about a team that wants to pound the ball and a bigger sized guy in there. And I don't know how much difference there are in them, but I think there's a good quality. I mean, I really like what he's doing. And he could, you know, possibly be more of a factor, you know, in the future. I think when you start doing this, you got to watch how much wear and tear are we doing on Dane. You know, he's playing playing down as a cash, and now he's playing up as a safety. And is that too much on him? You know, can we split his time and can he be more effective, just like we do with the defensive line? Now, I haven't usually been in this situation in the back end. You know, most of the time. I hope to have 4 that I feel real confident about. I mean, to go out there and what we talk about winning, you know, championships or whatever you want to call it, as winning the down or winning the game. What guys, how many do you have that you can sit there that are on the first line, and then how many are behind them that you can say that you can slide in here with the other guys and say they're good enough to get it done. And that's the whole challenge of us the whole time. That's all we've been doing, and that's why we practice. And I think guys see that, and over time, you know, it pays off, and we can see it. There's some payoff going on that maybe you guys don't see all the time. You know. Well, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it. Good luck in the rest of the Bible.
You too.
Yeah,